Okay, so there's 4 questions here. They're all about the same thing. We kind of have touched on this, but I want to dive headfirst into the subject. Genia asks, how do they respond about the risks of restaking being a daisy chain of potential risks? Clairvoyant asks, what doomsday scenarios have the team simulated or envisioned? Chainlink God says, how does or should the Eigen restaking ecosystem approach risk management, particularly managing the second or third order effects of LRTs, LRT-FI, cascading slashing conditions, AVS selection priorities, leverage caps, etc. And lastly, what's matter CFA says, it looks like a lot of rehypothecation in TradFi. How do you quantify the risk? I think this is what people's like first gut reaction goes to when somebody explains what restaking is. Like, oh, you take your ETH and then you stake it again. And then you can also keep on doing that over and over and over again. And people are like, oh, okay, great. So like, cascading liquidations. What I'm sure you guys have answered this many, many, many times. What's like the simple way to explain the scenario here? Not that this isn't a risk, but just like how do we provide more knowledge about what's going on?
Yeah, I think there is. We put out a detailed risk document, so I think that's maybe a good place to point it. We can put it up on the
I'll put it up on
YouTube
the show
link
notes and link. Yeah.
afterwards. I think that'll be awesome. But the high level thing is, number one, um, thinking of, I think the term restaking is what throws people off.
Mm-hmm.
If the exact same concept, for example, already existed for many years in Cosmos, called interchain security, right? It's called interchain security, so nobody thought of exactly the same questions. But here's the thing, that when you stake, so the right way to think of this is shared security. So imagine there are 1,000 protocols, each of which can have $1 million staked. Okay, so this is one world. Another world, and you take the same fees and then now aggregate them into a $1 billion pool, which is restaked across 1,000 protocols. Which world is better? Let's say in the first world, um, to attack a protocol, you need $1 million capital. And then if you do attack it, you're probably going to lose half of that 1 million or something like that. In the second world, to attack any one protocol, you need $1 billion capital. When people are comparing the two scenarios, usually what they're doing is they're thinking there are 1,000 protocols with $1 billion each. And then on the right side, there is 1,000 protocols with $1 billion restake. But that's just not the right comparison. At the same fee parity, if there are 1,000 protocols each paying a certain fee to maintain $1 million stake, you pay the same fee, you can actually sustain a $1 billion in a shared security model. So security is growing as you get more protocols. It's a very obvious thing once you state it like this, but that's what's happening. Okay, so you have much bigger security that is supporting all these things. Okay, now you do lose something in the second world. So the second world is better in the obvious sense that to attack any one protocol, you need like 1 billion. But there is a little bit of a deficiency in the second world, which is there is no unique attribution of this 1 billion to any one protocol, or how much is going to each protocol, which is what is leading to all these questions about, oh, I don't know how much I'm getting, there's a lot of risk and all of that. And the way we solve it is by a principle we call attributable security. Attributable security is the following concept. It says that an AVS gets this benefit of pooling, but in addition, AVS can buy a particular ability to slash and redistribute a portion of the funds. Let's say AVS 1, out of this $1 billion slashable, AVS 1 buys $25 million worth of attributable security, which means if something goes wrong on that AVS, the EigenLayer protocol maintains this complex calculation, which is what people are thinking, how is this going to happen? This is going to be in protocol, in the EigenLayer protocol, maintains what we call a solvency calculation. The calculation ensures that whatever happens, how many other protocols trigger slashing simultaneously, you will be able to redistribute your 25 million, your attributable portion. Now, suddenly all this question about over leverage and everything else is just simply gone, because each AVS has a unique, specified, attributable portion of slashing independent of what happens in all the other AVSs. So this creates compartmentalization. I know exactly how much I can redistribute if I slash. And so this is actually one one of the tightest system of crypto economic security. It is not a leverage system with you don't know what leverage is happening, what. It's not like that. It is pooled security. Now, so what is the benefit you're getting? The benefit you're getting is in the second world. Now, even though I have only an attributable security of 25 million to attack my protocol, I still need a $1 billion capital. I'm just much, much more secure in the second world than having my own $25 million pool in the first world. So that's the first picture about shared security and attributable security. This changes the dynamics of how people think about AVS's compartmentalization. So another like point is between eigenlayer. So we can do this inside eigenlayer, but to do this between eigenlayer and Ethereum, because we don't build Ethereum, so we have limited interfaces to Ethereum. But the nice thing with Ethereum is Ethereum's actually extremely high security. So there's a lot of stake in Ethereum, $70 billion or whatever today's price is there. But there's a lot of stake in Ethereum, and the Ethereum's security requirement is not all of this 70 billion. And this is a whole other like discussion to understand exactly how much security is needed, because staking is not fundamentally protecting all the value, all the TVL that is sitting on Ethereum. The staking is only protecting the value in flight in Ethereum. So that's a whole detailed discussion. But what happens is EigenLayer, as the amount of assets restaked between Ethereum and EigenLayer increases, let's say it's 100% of Ethereum stake is restaked on EigenLayer. EigenLayer will not sell attributable security for this entire 100%. It'll take a back off, say something like 50% we don't touch. We're only selling insurance for the remaining 50%. So what this does is basically there is a buffer that's maintained to make sure that Ethereum, it's an accounting for making sure that Ethereum security budget is at least that much, and the remaining is attributed to all these AVSs. So that's the way we deal with that. And then finally, LRTs, right? Initially, when 1 year back we were thinking about LRTs, we were actually worried that LRTs can have all this financialization and risk, and there is some truth to it. But there's also the other side of it, which is, imagine there are no LRTs. So that's how EigenLayer is natively. There is no liquid restaking position or like a fungible position. But what could happen is I'm a staker. I stake in Ethereum and EigenLayer, and then now I have a position, and you know people want to borrow against this position. So somebody could potentially build a borrowing protocol against an EigenLayer position. This position is non-fungible and unique, and so the only way, if my position is now liquidated, the only thing that you can do is now you have to go and trigger a withdrawal from EigenLayer. An EigenLayer triggers a withdrawal from Ethereum. So what is happening is, if you did not build a layer of LRT, then anything that's happening in the financialized world has ripples that propagate down into EigenLayer into Ethereum. You have to withdraw that money from EigenLayer. EigenLayer has to withdraw that money from Ethereum to honor that position. And suddenly the AVS security fluctuates, Ethereum security fluctuates, all of these things happen. With the liquid restaking position, what happens is somebody has an LRT that's being lent and borrowed against. They get liquidated. The other guy just snatches the LRT. There is no impact on EigenLayer or Ethereum. So financialization in a smart contract system is going to happen. And if it is going to happen, how do we mitigate and buffer it against ripples through the system? I think this is the first thing that is already true is LRTs actually create buffering for EigenLayer and Ethereum. Okay. Now, where is the actual risk? I think the actual risk is in what people call looping, right? You go and deposit an LRT, get ETH, and then go and or leveraged tree staking or leverage staking. That's where actual risks are. So this is now going into I stake, I borrow against an LRT. And so the first thing is you cannot restake an LRT into EigenLayer. Like that's not a thing. This is again like some confusion in people's model or understanding of EigenLayer. I can't just go stake in Puffer or something, get an LRT, and then stake the LRT back into EigenLayer. EigenLayer doesn't allow for that. So that's not a thing. Okay. So and people are like, oh, I'm going to restake the restake and all this stuff. Like, okay, that's the first baseline thing. But this could obviously happen in a lending market, that I take an LRT and then I borrow ETH against it and then I go and stake it and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically a assignment of risk in these lending markets. And that's what we should focus on. Why is this lending market allowing you to borrow an ETH for an LRT with, like, only X% collateralization rather than like Y% collateralization? Why am I able to loop 50 times rather than only loop 2 times? So these are the kinds of questions that we should ask lending markets. This is mispricing of risk in the lending market, has nothing really to do with EigenLayer. And so, but we are going to be like putting out some of these modeling things so that people understand what is actually going on.
Mm-hmm. Nima, do you want to add anything to the daisy chain of risk conversation?
The 2 points were pretty much what I was going to say. So
beautiful. Okay.
Just one more thing on that is smart contract risks, which we didn't talk about, right? Like I talked about earlier when talking about the withdrawal lag, that the EigenLayer core, ETH staked, is one way it is protected is because of the withdrawal lag, because there is a time to pause and do security council interventions and all of that. But on the AVS slashing, AVS could have a bug in the slashing contracts that is really only buffered by the veto committee.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, we are going to have a single veto committee, but over time, you may have a marketplace of veto committees.
Mm-hmm.
Like each staker and operator decides what kind of like veto committee they want, and AVSs can work with them only if they agree on the. It's like a kind of like a mutually trusted party, or like a arbitration agreement, right? So that's what it is.
Actually, one thing I would say in this discussion is there is probably a misconception around how operators view their position in the ecosystem, right? There will be a sweet spot in terms of how many ABSs they want to opt into, in contrast to how much risk they're willing to take on, right? Because obviously, if you go beyond this threshold, beyond this like sweet spot, you're increasing your risk at the at the risk of losing yields, right? Using like, if you go down, you can't really have that anymore. So the whole concept of, each operator is going to opt into every single ABS out there, probably not the most practical scenario.
If you enjoyed all of that, then you'll absolutely love the Bankless newsletter. Join over 300,000 fellow readers, all for free. Click below to sign up.